Yeah. It's blasting right now. Do you want it to blast?
So I'm reading them? I'm reading them? Okay. Whoa, there we go. There's a bar of darkness across the top of the screen. Hopefully you're not getting that out there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yogi to Yogi here in the sweaty tropics. Today, as usual, in Yogi to Yogi, we have open question and answer format on any kind of topic that is pertinent to the view, that is the philosophy and orientation and guiding teachings of the system, the methods, the practices, techniques, the path itself, overall, what are the stages of path, how does path work, the fruit of realization, the fruit of each practice in each stage, etc. So all these questions can be taken, okay? And can be random, but it's nice when these questions are based upon your actual experience. This is the most important. Just philosophizing, it's a little bit of a waste of time, maybe a lot of waste of time. So let's try to keep it really pertinent, okay? Is this the lowest fan setting? Okay. All right, so I'll start off by reading some, and we can take more as, right, as we,
Right into the chat box.
what's that?
They can write into the chat
You can write into the chat box for more questions, okay? So let's start with Mikhail. Could you explain the difference between the philosophy and practice of Tantra and Vedanta? In a very simple way of putting it, Mikhail, in the classical understanding of Vedanta, there's no sense of the world energy of manifestation of individual nature or of the world or objects or situations, the physical world, the chemical world, any of it, the energetic world of sensations or emotions. In classical Vedanta, none of that is considered real. It's considered to be completely illusory, right? Not that it's misunderstood, not that human beings are misunderstanding the energy. Vedanta, in its traditional classical way, does not say that. Vedanta says it's not happening, it's not real. In fact, it goes so far in this absolute stance to actually say that this isn't even happening. When I learned classical Vedanta in India, my gurus said, from the Vedanta viewpoint, this experience of me talking right now and you listening isn't even happening. It's not that we're perceiving it incorrectly, it's not even occurring. And I found that an untenable way of being, an untenable idea that that our entire experience is simply not happening, right? So in one way to understand Vedanta versus Tantra without going into a huge academic dissertation about it, which is, it really does deserve that, just in a short question and answer session like this, is to say that Tantra says that something's happening for sure. We know that. We have an intrinsic sense that something is happening, that we are part of being alive and that there's a process going on. But Tantra says that we don't quite understand it. We misperceive it. We have delusions about what is actually going on for us and the universe. That's the distinction. Vedanta says illusion, universe is not happening, you're not happening, your speaking is not even happening. All this is an illusion. Tantra says it's a delusion, misperception, until we're enlightened. Then in Tantra, the delusion clears and it's radiance and effulgence, and you see that the universe and yourself are nothing but spontaneously arising energy without conditioning, without limitation, without any flavors at all, just pure bliss, compassion, pleasure in potential form, and radiating out into actual forms and then dissolving back into itself. That's the fruit of realization of creation in the Tantra experience. Excuse me. Just finished breakfast. Then in the Vedanta, it is that realization, or the fruit is not to realize that this is some emanation of spontaneous arising energy that's unconditioned, right? But instead, and diametrically opposed, the realization is that all this goes away, completely disappears. And there is no longer your consciousness caught in an illusion, a magician's illusion, no longer caught there. And your experience of it is there's no more emanation of individuality or illusion of individuality. There's no more worlds. There's only one kind of, I like to refer to it as a milky, homogeneous experience of whiteness consciousness. That's it. No content of consciousness, just the whiteness of it. So in a nutshell, this is the difference between Tantra and Vedanta. Now, having said that, there's a modern movement in Vedanta, which I became aware of about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit late. I'm coming late to the party here. But there's a modern movement in Vedanta that is actually Tantra with a transcendental emphasis, because it now is accepted. And some people call it Neo-Vedanta. Some people speak as if this has always been the truth in Vedanta, which is not true. But this new type of Vedanta, this Neo-Vedanta that's being espoused now, is the main form of Vedanta I see in online discussions or whatever, says that this energy is actually there. It's an illusion, but it doesn't mean this isn't happening. Okay, so that's just not true to Vedanta. And I think what happened is they saw the untenable position of their philosophy, and they finally capitulated to the tantrics in this age, thousands of year battle between Tantra and Vedanta. And they finally said, yeah, you're right. The highest realization can't be to be unconscious and asleep, like in the sleep state. Vedanta says the fruit of everything in Vedanta is to be asleep, just unconscious, no sense of consciousness, whatever. They relate it to the sleep state. And Tantra is not like that, right? So there's spaciousness in Tantra, and then that spaciousness is filled with spontaneity of arising potential energies, right? There's the potential base energy, and there's all the arisings. So the Neo-Vedanta has moved on the continuum more towards the Tantric side, towards this energy reality. And they argue that that's Vedanta and that's traditional Vedanta, but it's not. And once they're talking like this, I engaged a few people like this who had these ideas on our Facebook group a long time ago. And I don't do it anymore, and they don't really come on anymore, because I said, look, just admit that you have a tantric philosophy now and that you're starting to do tantric practices, but not enough to have realization. So you stay with this transcendental reality, okay? So this is the key. They've slid this way. The same way Mahayana Buddhism had this great idea of all oneness and consciousness and energy and so forth, but they had no practice. So they slid this way, and they invaded the Shaiva Tantra and took all of its texts and took all its practices and created Vajrayana. So the same thing happened with Vedanta, because Tantra, in its view, I think pretty much trumps every kind of view out there, because it's so pragmatic and yet gives highest realization. So people have a very hard time saying, oh, it's not true. I mean, who would want the Vedantic realization? It's like you're completely impotent, you're cut off at the knees, and you're just living in this like peaceful cloud of nothingness, and you're living within an illusion, right? That's got to feel weird. I used to, make a bit of a crass joke when I was younger, saying, when I would talk to Vedanta, just say, if this is all illusion and it's all a production of your karma, just starve yourself, just stop eating and leave here. Because if you want to get back to what you are and go to sleep forever, this is a rational way to do it. And being caught here and suffering this out for however many years it was would seem kind of silly. But then they would retort, oh, but this isn't really happening. The illusion of the years of my life aren't really happening, and I don't suffer with it, so that's fine. And it just brings up another point between Tantra and Vedanta. If you take this transcendentalist viewpoint, you perform a psychological schism. You dissociate from the world. And yeah, you don't suffer. Why? Because you're not here. Mentally, emotionally, you've gone away. You've packed your bags and you went away to some fake heaven in your mind, or whatever Vedanta realization is supposed to be, which is nothingness. It's really nihilism, and you have this escapism from this world. So yeah, you're not going to feel anything there. You're also not going to be here, and you're not going to feel anything at all. You're not going to be here and feel life and be in life and understand it. So another big difference between Tantra and Vedanta is Tantra really uses the energies that appear in your karmic spectrum, in your life experience, as the fuel for the practice. We do integration practice, which is in everyday moments, interacting with the world. And we do seated practice, formal practice, to develop the skill set and understanding and to stabilize that we find in the integration practice of every moment. In Vedanta, the really only integration practice is to say, this is an illusion every moment and not get involved. So that's some of the differences. If you have no specific question about it, you can feel free to ask, but I could go on all day about it. So Anouk, once being a workaholic and having suffered twice from a nervous breakdown, I learned myself to do nothing for hours, sometimes days even. So what is procrastination then? Once being a workaholic and having suffered twice from a nervous breakdown, I learned myself to do nothing. Okay, so you used to overwork and then you learned how to do nothing for hours or days at a time. What is procrastination? It's still the same simple definition, Anouk. There's no nuancing or finessing that needs to be done. When you need to do something, you do it. Let's look at what comes before the question of procrastination, which is what we were big on in Trikamasiddha Yoga. Do not create a large obligation spectrum. Do not create a large karmic obligation spectrum. Then you won't have a lot of things to attend to. Then you won't be procrastinating when you're pushing things off. Then you can actually relax for that nothing to do for hours and days at a time. And isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Isn't that wonderful? So we all want to have less obligations, less karmic obligations, but still maintain a really good functional life. That's the key, right? Okay. So that's easy.
There's a follow-up to the Vedanta topic.
On the chat box?
Yeah, reading at the bottom.
If Vedanta realization is so unattractive, why it became the star of Indian spirituality for the last 1,000 years? Good question, Rudy. Vedanta became the star of Indian spirituality for many reasons. And one of the main reasons is it's very easy to grasp onto an absolute position. It's not so easy to say, this reality that manifests is real to some degree, but it's not the ultimate truth. That leaves you in a middle place of, oh my gosh, now I have to work it out and figure it out and do all these hard practices. And Vedanta is very easy. This is all illusion. It's so easy. This is all illusion. And in fact, classically in Vedanta, you don't even meditate because there's nothing to meditate on because the meditator is an illusion. The process of meditation is illusion. The fruit of meditation is illusion. You just wait for the awakening of the pure knowledge that all this is illusion, and there you're there. That's why it was attractive, Rudy, for 1,000 years, because it's so freaking easy, and you get to dissociate completely, right? So you get to dissociate and not have to feel the suffering of the world. And don't forget, India has been moving towards a transcendentalist type of reality as its main cosmological identity for quite a long time. Tantra, yes, came early and was the mainstay of most of Indian practice. Veda was with the Brahmins. They were 5% of the population of ancient India, and still 5 now, actually. And then the Tantra was for all the rest of the masses. You're either a shamanistic, animistic person in India, or you're a Tantrika. So like you could say the middle class and a lot of the lower class who weren't living as tribals were Tantrikas. So the vast majority of India was Tantrikas. Vedanta was very small in the past 1,000 years. This is another illusion that is perpetrated to tell you that India is Vedantic. Hardly, no way. It's like saying India is a vegetarian. Total rubbish, absolute rubbish. Over 80% of Indians eat meat, eggs, milk, fish. I used to live in Varanasi, as you know, in India. So I would go out at night in this most holy place of all of India, Varanasi. And what's happening on the street? There's people out selling eggs all night long. So the vegetarians sneak out and they eat eggs. Oh, I'm still vegetarian. Yeah, sure you are, right? So India is full of these kind of dichotomies and basically BS. The cover story that the high-class Brahmins want you to know is that Vedanta rules, Veda rules, and this is it. But the truth is, the majority of people are tantrikas. The majority of people are not vegetarian in India. The majority of people are into the mother goddess or Shiva, right, in all their forms. And the majority of people practice puja and mantra and energy practices and see the world through the lens of real tantra. However, since the Vedanta was around, but since the Muslims came, that took it into another transcendental God is here, you're here kind of situation, that duality. That started moving them into more transcendentalism as well. I got to go to heaven, the Muslim heaven. Then the Christians came. Now, Christians were here 40 years after Jesus, apparently. But like right afterwards, some disciples came right over on a boat to Kerala and Goa. But besides that, it didn't make a big impact. But when the British came, they brought Christianity in mass. And there's the modern form of Christianity, the non-Gnostic form is very transcendental. So the Muslim thing hit him with the transcendentalism, then the Christian thing hit him with the transcendentalism. And because the strength of the akaras and the ashrams of Tantra and stuff were all dwindling and crashing, no one was keeping the Shaiva Dharma really strong anymore. So this infiltration of a dissociative transcendentalist view was coming through a lot already in the breakup of India's spiritual systems at 1000 CE. So fully 1,000 years ago, this transcendentalist movement, this not accepting reality and dissociation was already happening. Muslims, then Christians. Now you got the New Age even more. So, okay.
Two follow-ups from Michael in the chat about this, right under Rudy.
I also heard that Tantra is a gradual approach to the idea of Vedanta. No, that's nice for Vedanta people to say so that they can posit their position as the highest technique, the highest cosmology and technique. No, Michael, it is not true that Tantra is a gradual approach to the idea of Vedanta. Tantra awakening is both progressive and instantaneous. So Tantra has the sense of progressive awakenings and instantaneous awakenings both. And in a really pragmatic system like our tantric system, they work hand in hand. You'll see both coming to the fore, right? Under David Deva, farther down. Kitri Mudra. Wait. Under David. Oh, some say that at the end of Tantra, one has the same understanding of the world as in Vedanta. Absolutely not. Mikhail, absolutely not. Absolutely not. At the end of Tantric practice, you do not have the revelation of a Vedantist at all. In fact, it's thought in classical Tantra, and you can see this in textbooks, it's thought that if you go for the realization of Tantra, if you hold Vedanta, if you hold the view of Vedanta, that ultimate realization is to be asleep, unconscious, inert, no thought content, no conscious self-reflection. There's no self-awareness. In Vedantic realization, this may blow your mind, but in Vedantic realization, there is no self-awareness. You cannot have a reflexive awareness in Vedanta because they say it makes duality. Another huge difference between the two is Tantra says the one that is one, like the sun, shines its rays out infinitely, non-dually. There's only one sun, but it also illumines itself with the same light. Spontaneously, effortlessly, the sun is illumined by its own light that it radiates. This is the tantric way of understanding the fruit of the practice of Tantra. When we reach the fruit in Tantra, we are self-effulgent, perfected consciousness of a Buddha, a realized being, and we have awareness of that experience, unbroken awareness of that experience, but not as subject-object, not as duality, just as a spontaneous natural knowing. Huge difference in the fruit, huge. So yeah, you got to pick which one really grabs you, which one seems better for you. Of course, I'm trashing Vedanta. I'd love to have a debate with a Vedanta person over here, but I find that they tend to get into endless loops because it's all just theoretical with them. They don't have practices. They can't show the fruit, So, okay, back to the list. Yves from Brazil, I think. I'm studying about the 6 realms and trying to understand about realization and the realm dimensions. When we get more aware about our true essential nature and we die, Are we reborn in a more elevated realm like God realm or heaven realm? Okay. So if we die and we've done a lot of good spiritual work, Eves, we can move into a different realm, but like a lighter realm. But God realm, Titan realm, those realms of the 6 realms, they all are self-limiting. All of them are based on karma. So they're all going to run out someday. What we really want to do is go beyond the level of desire where the 6 realms are manifested and go to the realm of form or no form, where the siddhas, the mahasiddhas, the great meditators, great yogins exist in this other form where they're still going through practices and they're still learning and growing and teaching. They're still teaching. So there's more to do after we die. It's not just over. And yes, we'd like to have a situation where we're what's called a no returner. We'd like to have realization that allows us to not return to the realm of form, where we have incredible opportunities to get liberated, but yet to struggle at the same time. Imagine the consciousness you have now, free of all earthly constraints like needing to eat or defecate or urinate or sleep, a body that breaks down. None of that's there in the realm of form or no form. And you could just continue to practice in these other dimensions, other realms. This is what's beyond the 6 realms. Are the Mahasiddhas in the heavenly realms, or can they flow through all of them? Are there more elevated, fully realized beings trying to help us? Yes, Mahasiddhas are not limited by any conditions. Mahasiddhas are completely unlimited by any conditions of this realm of desire or the realm of form. And they do traverse all these different realms. And then if we are so good in our practice that we attain rainbow light body, there's a famous text that says, a tradition that says, when you rainbow light body, you can take 3,000 people with you. 3,000 suffering beings can all be liberated instantly when you get liberated. So there are levels of influence that can be exerted by Mahasiddhas. They can't just pluck you out of your samsara and your karma. You have to live through it yourself because you have your own experience of your own Shiva nature, your own nature of mind. No one can do it for you. That's the thing. Even them getting enlightened doesn't enlighten you. But yes, they are available all the time. That's what all this is about. That's what all these lineages, this master, that master, and his wife up here are about. You can't quite see him. Konkanaba and Machanda and all the masters on this side. All this is about receiving the blissful waves of transmission of blessing power by hooking up to this kind of community of ascended, realized masters. Okay? All right. Is human realm easier to get to full realization than God realm or even heaven's realm? Human realm's hard to get to. It's a thing that you have to earn. All the Dharma traditions are agreeing about this, that it's kind of difficult to get this birth because in this birth we have free choice. The other realms don't have free choice. And in free choice, you can actually develop and you can actually become realized so much easier than in a place where there's no free choice. But it's a double-edged sword. Free choice, I don't want to exercise. I have free choice not to use my free choice. So it's also a place where people get very lazy, very silly. And because humans are very flexible, we can act like all different kinds of other realm beings, even though we're human. And then we don't evolve. Okay? So it's a catch-22. Easier to get to, more aware. How can consciousness get more aware about its true nature in realms like animal realm or hungry ghost realm? Basically, it can't. That's why you want to be in the human realm. You know, the famous stories of people that wake up out of the human realm and come back, wake up out of the ghost realm or whatever, they come back, boom. They're amazing stories, like the Buddha. Very rare. You just don't think about evolving when you're in those. You're stuck so deeply in that karma, identified so deeply, you forget. Then you have to wait for all of that karmic energy to dissipate, a few thousand years, whatever, million years, and then you spontaneously awaken out of that into the next dimension that you're being attracted to through an energy you've cultivated. Now, yeah, that's why the God realm is the most difficult to get out of. And that's why it's said that rishis and mahasiddhas are pretty much the only ones who can help God realm people. that they'll take pity on somebody, in this way, have compassion, and get a God realm person to wake up, gain some humility. It said, pluck them out of the God realm, because in the God realm, you're not suffering. There's no desire to grow, no desire to evolve whatsoever, because you're not suffering. We call it non-obvious suffering in our school. You're actually suffering because you're not liberated. Anytime you're not liberated, you're suffering. Whether you want to acknowledge or not, you're suffering. If you're a rock star with a lot of money, can take a lot of drugs, have a lot of fans, have a lot of sex, be really famous, get free meals at restaurants, you don't look like you're suffering. But that's all just a time problem. When the money runs out, when the drugs run out, when the good looks run out, when your fame runs out, when you get sick with cancer, you're suffering. And it's worse than ever because you had no preparation. So even the God realm suffers, right? Okay. If a being will eventually search for something more in the direction of increasing awareness and eventual full realization, why do we need to have compassion or try to help others to get there? Won't they get there anyway on their own time? All right, Eves. Basically, you're asking, since everybody gets liberated anyway, why do we need to cultivate compassion? And why do we need to do anything for everybody out there? True, good point. And there's spiritual systems that say that. Here's the thing. I don't think we should be so confident that we can just keep putting off our own liberation and that no consequences will come of that we will absolutely be really liberated no matter what. What? Yeah. I don't think it works like everybody thinks it works. And there's enough evidence for this in Buddhist teachings and tantric teachings that the actual endpoint for everybody may not be liberation. You may have to really fully choose it for a number of lives and work on it to actually become liberated. If you reach the end of this universal time cycle and you haven't been liberated, and don't say, oh, well, I'll surely be liberated by then. How do you know? Because we're not liberated now. And most of us watching this right now have been around for a few million births. So the confidence that we're going to get liberated before this universal time cycle dissipates and resolves back into nothingness, I don't have that confidence. I don't think you should. And this is why we have compassion for beings. We don't want anybody to get recycled. That's one thing. The second thing is, many systems say that since this is all like a delusion or illusion like Vedanta, okay, we don't have to be so compassionate. We don't have to generate compassion. That's kind of really silly. If we're all going to be liberated anyway, then don't worry about it. Let everybody just suffer. Really? Really? So then we shouldn't prosecute, take into jail pedophiles or sociopath murderers or people that hurt other people. It doesn't make any sense. If you're in this, even if your end thought is Vedanta and it's all illusion, but you're in it, why not be proactive to alleviate the suffering of others if your suffering is alleviated? Now, this is important that we alleviate our suffering first. We gain realization as we're cultivating compassion, and as that happens, more and more we start helping others and loving and serving others with compassion. So to me, it's just a very practical, sensible thing that we would get into compassion and so on. But it's also a big part of tantric practice. Why? Okay, let's see if you can see behind me here is Anuttara Shiva. Anuttara Shiva is the space component of Shaivism, the pure open spaciousness. And then to his left, or there's really no gender on Shiva. I can't say his. So to her, his, or maybe I used a new pronoun, they. To they's left and right are the two emanations of the dual energies that arise in the dualistic world. The passion over here in the red Ma Pranashakti, and the equanimity of tranquility, and peace over here as Shambhunath Shiva. So, where was I going with this? Anybody remember? Compassion, thank you. So, another way to understand this is when you look at the Trikaya, we have three bodies represented by these three fingers here in this mudra, the Trishul mudra, the weapon, right? Okay, these three bodies are all one. Actually, they're indivisible. They can't be separated. Tantra says we have these three aspects to our being and they cannot be separated. One is space aspect, that's Anuttara Shiva. The other one is the pure energy of bliss and pleasure that is spontaneously available in this dimension of space all the time as pure potential. That energy is represented by these two icons here. The passion, the dynamism, the heat of sexual passion, and then the sweet coolness and of equanimity and peacefulness, tranquility, right? These two aspects of the same potential energy held latent within this Anuttara Shiva, this non-gendered, no form, pure open spaciousness, where everything manifests. This is that level. Now, knowing that this Trikaya, knowing that there's the spaciousness, the energy of us, and the individual manifestation that we are, the three, if we are this spaciousness and we are this blissful, passionate energy, the way this blissful, passionate energy comes to us is in the form of compassion and pleasure. Compassion and pleasure. It's interesting. Compassion with passion, right? So that means that if we cultivate compassion as a non-dual, as an unlimited, unconditioned experience, we are then invoking the energetic potentialities of our Shiva nature. In other words, we're awakening and purifying a connection to and an expression of that aspect of our nature that goes beyond space, which is the expression of energy within space. So this makes compassion practice very, very important in all the Dharma traditions. Vajrayana agrees with this, Bun agrees with this, Shaivism agrees with this, okay? All right. You get a little bit of a pushback from Taoists on this one. Taoists are like, no, you don't need to cultivate compassion. It's a strenuous romantic idea. Usually the Taoists agree with us, but on this one they disagree. And they disagree because they take the view of Dzogchen as well. Dzogchen practitioners in their core don't cultivate compassion. If they come from a Bun background, if they come from a Vajrayana background, then they had that as part of their background, so it stays with them. But if they start just as a Dzogchen practitioner, they don't cultivate compassion because in your self-perfected state already exists these energies right here, these three, bump, in the Trikaya, plus your individual nature. So the space and the energy gets to express through this individual. And in Dzogchen practice, they say, well, once you realize that, then compassion is there naturally, spontaneously, no reason to cultivate it. But you wouldn't see a Dzogchen practitioner who had attainment be non-compassionate, you see? It's there naturally. So it's still there, still present, and still acknowledged as one of the core base experiences of the universe itself, right? Of our esoteric spiritual universe. All right. So we do need to help others. We do need to be compassionate. We do need to cultivate it, if alone for giving us humility, if that alone, right? Okay. Nadine. Hello, Dharma. I have a question concerning the chanting of the sound Ong. In the Shabda Brahman online seminar and in Kundalini Yoga Level 1 free course, you explained that the correct sound of Ong should be nasal, not closed lips for the M like Ong. I am currently studying Sanskrit with a very traditional Indian teacher, and she told us that this nasal Ong has to be chanted only when letters of certain groups like palatals or gutturals are followed, for example, in a mantra. Otherwise, she strictly told us to pronounce the ghost vowel M properly by closing our lips. Now you're not making it clear whether she said Om has to be chanted only when letters of certain groups like palatals. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure whether she's saying that the M sound should be there when you chant the mantra Om or not. Otherwise, she strictly told us to pronounce the ghost vowel M properly by closing our lips. Could you please comment on that? Is there a difference in the intention of chanting Om nasally or with closed mouth? Or is it maybe only a scholarly thing? Thank you very much for answering. Okay. I'm not. Yeah, if you want to send a quick question in, Nadine, a quick answer, Nadine, to the.
Yes, the M sound should be there when only chanting Om.
Yes, the M sound should be there when only chanting Om. Okay. So you'll see Om has an anuswar, that's that's nasalized. So it's very important in the spiritual practice of Tantra when you're trying to activate the higher chakras in the head to chant the Om with the lips open and nasalized. This is a practice thing. And in the Veda chanting, when I trained to be a Brahmin priest, it was actually chanted like that as well. So I'm not sure what school you're going to there. Om with the closed mouth was also made to end certain sounds and begin a new one. That's Veda. But in Tantra, we're using Om as a mantra. And therefore, we wanted to undergo the samuchara, where it rises within the central channel and opens up higher chakras. For that, Om, we always want to take it up. Okay? Hopefully that helps your confusion. So chant the way that your teacher wants you to chant for shlokas and sutras and stuff like that. But when it comes to the actual energetics of using this stuff, then Tantra usually has a little bit more sophistication. All right. Donald, how are the 5 elements linked to Anahata? How are the 5 elements linked to Anahata? How are the 5 elements? Okay, Donald, let's see. Some of the ways, it's a very short question, so I'm going to try to read into it a bit, what you're trying to ask. They're linked many ways to Anahata, we could say. Not so much Anahata chakra. So Anahata chakra is linked to one of the 5 elements, wind element, if that's what you mean, Vayu. That's why the symbol of the heart chakra animal-wise is antelope. That real quick antelopes can just move so quickly and jump and spring, right? So that's why that's there. But if you don't mean the heart chakra, if you mean the heart bindu, where we condense all our consciousness and vitality at the moment of death or rainbow body and then blast out from there, then that's an understanding of the 5 elements emanating from that base reality of the blue bindu, which is the base of everything. So the 5 elements spontaneously arise in that base of spaciousness mediated by the blue bindu of the heart and the central channel into our experience. And then the 5 elements as forms radiate into our experience in life. And then as permutations and combinations of the basic building blocks of reality, then each one links up earth to Muladhara chakra, water to Swadhisthana, fire to Manipura, wind to Anahata, as we said, and space to Vishuddha. What methods are recommended related to Anahata chakra to make a rainbow body more likely? Anahata chakra and...
Slower, because no one has these questions.
Okay. What methods, my wife just asked me to read slower. What methods are recommended related to Anahata chakra to make a rainbow body more likely? Okay. It's a little myopic, the question, because a rainbow light body is so far beyond chakra work. It's so far beyond chakra work. Like chakra work, if let's give the rainbow light body practice and path 100 steps, which is about accurate, actually. It's about, if I ever get to show you the pro forma, someday you get into deeper meditation, I'll show you, it's about 100 steps. The heart chakra work is done in like the first 10 steps. So it's not even foundational in a sense of it's so incorporated and left behind. But so it's not really a chakra situation. See, this is the thing. Chakras are not what people think they are. They're not the greatest end all and be all of yoga or the realization path. They're interesting, they're important, but they're not as big as people make. So to make a rainbow body is, let's say, is so much more than a heart chakra experience. It's kind of like if I go to build a big skyscraper of 1,000 stories, the question would be to me, okay, I'm going to go build this thing. And someone walks up to me, an analogous question to yours, Donald, says, so how important is it to develop, really good placing of the cinder blocks in this 100-story building? And I go, well, since the 100 stories is going to be a lot of cinder blocks, you got to know how to place them. But there's so much other stuff more important, like how deep you're going to dig your foundation, how you're going to put your steel girders up, blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like that. Okay. So I don't mean to blow off your question. I'm not. It's just that it's sort of, the rainbow body is so much more than some new age idea that you just bliss out through your heart and you get a rainbow. You become a rainbow. It's a very complex technology. It's a very long path. And yes, it exists after stage 7, after we have the true realization of spaciousness as our nature. And the practices don't seem difficult after that, even though it looks to be strenuous from the outside, because after stage 7, we dissolve all dualities of strenuous, non-strenuous, right? So it's irrelevant to say it's strenuous, and it's silly to say, as we've covered before, Donald, that all you have to do is relax and be in your nature, and that's all you got to do. You get to a certain point in your practice. This is what people think, because they don't know the path, right? They think they don't know the path. So they think you practice, you get boom, realization. Then you just hang out, spouting wisdomful maxims all the time and lining up people to do your workshops and listen to you, pontificate about non-dual nature and effortless life, which is so stupid and immature, really. So you have this realization, everything just keeps rocking on. Look at the Tibetans, if you want a good example of it. Don't look to the Indians, because the Indians in this way, they've lost it. They hit this 1 or 2 realizations of shunya, stage 6 or 7, and that's it. They think they're done. And they start hanging out like fat cats, being gurus, collecting disciples and paychecks and eating sweets until they get diabetes and dying. This is not the model of the Mahasiddhas that the Indians first gave us, actually, which is, no, life always goes on. The path is continuous until your rainbow light body. In this body or in another dimension, you may continue doing practice in rainbow light body. So the path goes on. Practice is just life itself, So think like this. And chakras are all a very small part in the beginning. I know you're just a beginner with all this stuff, so your questions are great. There's no problem with your questions. We embrace them. I just want to kind of open you up to seeing a breadth, a depth and a breadth that I don't think you're aware of at all about the practices of Tantra and non-dual meditation and rainbow light body, and get you opening to that kind of view of, whoa, you mean it's more than chakras? It's more than channels? Yeah, a lot more. Just as like when I first went to the United States and started teaching in 97, people didn't even know there were chakras outside the body in the Indian traditions. And here, our tradition had talked about extra bodily chakras, how to use them, how to connect to them with Kriya Yoga, what it means to expand into the extra bodily chakras outside your body. People didn't know that channels are not just in your body, but channels come out of your body, connecting you to the universe. And that's also a part of practice at the next level in the stages 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there's so much more to this, and it still hasn't, I've been teaching this for 20, 30 years in the West, and it still hasn't permeated and penetrated this neo-Hindu, neo-Shaivist, New Age thing that everybody today calls Shaivism and yoga, Hinduism. It just hasn't permeated it yet. It'll get there sooner or later. So your questions, what I'm trying to say, are well understood. I know where your questions are coming from, because the access to this kind of knowledge is just not usually available. And if you don't have that knowledge, you don't have the view. And if you don't have the view, you can't guide the practices. And on top of it, they don't even have the advanced practices or even intermediate practices out there. So all this is difficult, right? Okay, your third question, Donald. In any of the systems that you're familiar with, is there any model for male cycle? My body seems to change with some random cycle, but I don't see any pattern. Female body has obviously cycle linked to moon. Is there any cycle governing or influencing male? Thank you. Lots of love from Ireland. I love Ireland. I don't know of any tantric system that talks about a male cycle, or Ayurveda system that talks about a male cycle, other than possibly, but I do believe that there is a male cycle. Myself as an athlete, I noticed it in my athletics. I noticed the real cycle. I was going up, I was going down. Didn't matter what I did for training, didn't matter what I ate, I would plateau or get a little less skillful, less strength, less endurance, whatever, during a certain period each month. It wasn't really a month. It was something like a 6-week cycle or something like that. And I tracked it for a long time. And I finally learned that during those 2 weeks, it's usually about 2 weeks where I'm just down, and no matter what happens, don't train. Don't train hard, just relax, play the sport you're doing, whatever it is, because you're going to injure yourself. You're also going to deplete your reserves of energy. So it's kind of like there's a yin cycle, I think there is for men. It might be for women too. And see, this I don't know. This might be on top of this menstrual cycle. But I know for myself and some other athlete friends of mine who are open to it, we discussed this, they also sensed it. We would cut back on training. We'd cut back like 50%, do a lot more rehab. I try to listen to that cycle now a lot. It's very good to do. that might have implications for sadhana, or it may not. Another cycle I do know of, though, is the moon cycle, where the different moon phases through the 28 days, through the light and dark of the moon, trigger off, travel through the channel system of the body and trigger off different areas in the energy system of the body, almost like the open point system of acupuncture in Taoism. That's all I know about it. So I don't know that much about it. I don't use any kind of cycle when it comes to my own body cycle. I don't use it all when it comes to doing my practices. I just do the same practices all the time and don't expect the same result every day. Very simple. And this is Bobby Chop. Would you kindly please speak a moment about closure? Why do some people have a need for closure? Is it beneficial? If someone from the past reaches out to me for closure, should I offer it to them or let the ghosts stay in the past? Ultimately, does closure in any way, shape, or form affect my karma? If so, in what way? Thank you. So, Bobby, good question. I'm sure you've seen High Fidelity with John Cusack. If you haven't, make sure you see that movie. Young man, John Cusack, breaks up with his girlfriend. She breaks up with him, basically. And he goes on a tear, revisiting and rethinking about 8 old girlfriends to figure out what went wrong, to try to get closure and to try to learn from it. So, it's kind of instructional in a sense. Sometimes closure can teach you what you didn't see. I did benefit from when I went back and tried to get closure a few times. And I was like, wow, to hear their perception of me was so instructive. To hear how they saw me in relationship was so instructive. And then I got to contemplate on that and go, wow, she's right. She's right. The few I'm thinking about, they were so right. They were so right on the areas that I did not see that I was asleep to. So closure was very helpful for me karmically. You're saying, what about this karma? How does it affect your karma? Well, if you do closure correctly, it should dissipate your karma. Now, if you feel like someone's just hungry ghosting you and it's really over and they're kind of stalking you, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been stalked out there, but I was stalked by a girlfriend. And that's, there's no closure there. There's just restraining orders from the police department. You don't need to get involved with that and think that there's something else you need to do. You can't make it any clearer than stay the F away from me 100 meters. Here's a legal document saying it, So it's a pretty easy thing to decide, Bobby. Do you feel like you could benefit from having closure, hearing what they have to say? Could it also make that person, without you giving a ton of energy and losing your life energy over it, could a conversation or a cup of tea with the person help them get on with their life? That's really beautiful if that can happen. In the case where this woman was stalking me, that didn't work. We had a lot of talks and she still kept coming around weirdly at night, looking at my back window and stuff. So I just said, no, we can't do that. We need another route. But if this person's rational and open to reason and so forth, then you can maybe think compassionately, well, it's no sweat off my back, half hour just to chat with him, 20 minutes to chat with him at Starbucks and say, hey, it was what it was. It is what it is. It was good. It was bad. It was whatever, but we're here now and I don't hold any grudges and I wish you all the best. And that could be enough to get a person to release their own suffering and move on, which is good compassion. And it's nice when we can do that with somebody. If you have any more refining questions on it, feel free to send it because that's quite a practical question. I like those a lot. Elodie, Lao Tzu describes a dark tunnel in the infinite light and says it is named time. Is it our mind, a dark tunnel in the infinite light, and says it is named time? Is it our mind that creates this limited perception? If we go beyond the mind, we go beyond time, right? Okay. Let's put Lao Tzu on the side. As you know, I'm a Taoist and I was trained really well in the scriptural side of Taoism, and most Taoism today is what I'd call pop Taoism, pretty much garbage. Because the ultimate Taoist experience of the realization of our own nature actually tends towards the sense of darkness, not light. utter darkness, not light. So it's different than the pop kind of stuff you're getting. That's been influenced a lot by Indian Tantra and Christianity New Age over time, and it's grabbing onto all these visions of light. Okay. Let's go into this other question, though, you asked about. Name time. Is it our mind that creates this limited perception of time? So if we go beyond mind, we go beyond time. Yes. What capacity of mind, though? if we look at a continuum, we have base mind and mind function arising from base mind. So base mind is the pure spaciousness of Anuttara Shiva. That's base mind. From that arises mind function, first in the form of pure potentialities, then in the myriad of gods and goddesses and humans and all objects and situations, planets, universes, galaxies, everything, right? And beyond what we can perceive. So in that spectrum from base mind all the way out into the most limited sense of conditioned mind, right? Mind function, where I'm going to add 2 + 2 = 4, right? That's a continuum. Now, if you go beyond your mind, somewhere in this function, on this line, going back to base mind, you do go beyond time, or let's say in the beginning, you start to open up to alternative times. So again, let's look at the 12-stage view. The first 4 stages are called self, stage 1, 2, 3, 4. The next 4 stages, 5, 6, 7, 8, are called time. And we are actively dissolving time in our practices, even by not even focusing on time, just by what happens naturally as we do the practices that are relevant to stage 5, 6, 7, and 8. Our mind on this continuum is being retracted into its source as base mind. Mind function is moving away from constant movement of wind in the channels. Channel wind is becoming harmonized. Then channel wind is dissipating. Then stillness is opening up. Boom. And you're starting to go then beyond that mind. And as you do that, the first step is, like in stage 5, if you're really doing stage 5, alternative times will start to visit you. And you'll be like, huh? Is that possible? I thought time flowed like this. I thought Tuesday came after Monday. I thought Wednesday came after Tuesday, and this will continue, and different types of times will reveal themselves to you, right? Although your karma and your identity is very much locked into this linear time, right? So yes, the more the mind function dissolves back into its source along the way, each step along the way reveals more and more opening to alternative times, and then eventually the dissolution of all time as you eventually just identify with this pure spaciousness of yourself for moments. All time will disappear, all times will disappear. And the same thing with the manifestation of the Sambhogakaya here in its red and white channel form. When you're in that, it's timeless as well. Even though it's a pure potentiality that can be experienced, it's timeless experience. Yeah, this is quite high up. So what I would look for first there's some spaces where we may get timelessness. We can't grasp on them. We can't extend them because it just won't work. It's our grasping mind already functioning. Timelessness is gone already. As soon as you're grasping with your mind, timelessness is gone already. But be aware of timelessness that could open up for a moment every now and then, but be more aware in the intermediate stages of alternative times showing up. Now, not a lot. I mean, to be honest, because I was a pretty hardcore practitioner for a lay person who held a business and was married and stuff, I can't even imagine what it's like for people who do like career in the cave for 40 years in a row. It's just amazing to me. But there were times where alternative times opened up for me, and I felt as if I'd stepped into them for 2 or 3 days at a time. Not often. And it was magical and both disconcerting, freaky, weird at the same time. Magical and weird or disconcerting. And sometimes I sought out the help of a neurologist because I thought something was wrong with me or something like that. So they can open up for you sometimes. There's no reason to push for alternative times, though, to experience them by pushing into them. I think that can create a problem. If they occur, they occur. Good question. Next one. Space is materialized by the body. Is the way to go beyond the deep sensoriality, enhancing the Gyanendriya that are connected to the elements to transcend space? Is the way to go beyond the deep sensoriality, enhancing the Gyanendriyas that are is the way to go beyond enhancing the Gyanendriyas that are connected to the elements to transcend space? I don't quite understand her question. I'm sorry, Elodie, in English, this one I don't quite get, but let's start with the first part. Space is materialized by the body. I don't understand that. Space is materialized. Space cannot be materialized. Space is space. It can never come into material form. That's the whole point.
The body is materialized.
Space is opposite of the body.
No, like the body is materialized from space, like Dharma. So yes.
Yeah, our body doesn't materialize from space. That's what I'm trying to say. So very clearly, let's make that clear. Space, this Dharmakaya aspect of ourself, the Shiva Kaya, this pure spaciousness, does not manifest. It does not manifest. If it did, it would be underneath the laws of change. And this is unchanging, right? It's because it's nothing, it's unchanging, right? It's a hosting presence. And then within it, the manifestation of energy occurs. So right away, the first part's off. So maybe the rest of the question's off. But if you can clarify that question for us, if you're still there, please do. I'll go to your third question instead. Is focusing on Sahasra or the upper Dvada Shanta a way to stay connected to loving awareness in Trikamasa Yoga? No. Focusing, if that helps you to focus on Sahasra Chakra or Dvada Shanta, if that helps you stay in loving awareness, great. But is it a method that we use to stay in loving awareness? No. To stay in loving awareness, what we use in Trikamasa Yoga is staying in loving awareness. Yes, we're a boring, full realization path that just does things directly often. If I want to stay in loving awareness, I stay in it. I generate loving awareness. And this is the four immeasurables that we're always trying to generate, right? The four immeasurables. Who knows them?
For many of us.
Yeah. Got a quiz here in the room.
Equanimity,
Equanimity, joy, compassion, love. Very good. So equanimity, joy, love, and compassion. So love is one of the immeasurables, and we're supposed to be feeling into that all the time. If you need a chakra point to locate to do it, like your heart or Sahasra or Dvada Shanta, you can, no problem. But the main thing is to stay in that loving awareness. The main thing is to generate it, to love others and to be in that space of love, right? Okay. What do you think the practice of sweat lodge as a help to purify? What do you think of the practice of sweat lodge as a help to purify the body, mind on yogic path? Well, I have some Native American blood, and I did train in sweat lodge, and I was authorized by Grandmother Kitty Hawk, one of the great medicine women of the Lakota, who was trained by Archie Lame Deer, John Fire Lame Deer's son, I think. And so that's a serious lineage I was trained in, and she trained me to do sweat lodge, so I can speak authoritatively on this. Sweat lodge as a ceremony in a ritual context with deep intention and commitment will definitely help to purify the mind and the heart, without a doubt. Sweating purifies you, but I sweat enough down here in Costa Rica. I don't need a sweat lodge for sweating. But the symbology of it, the construction of the sweat lodge as being a microcosm of the macrocosm, each connection of each bent twig that holds up the lodge, sapling and tie off position has a cosmological significance and even astrological significance, right? So you're creating a micro macro, and then you sit inside and you make the prayers and you go around praying, and you're just basically confessing and praying in a beautiful way to rectify yourself to your own nature. So if you want to use that, it's a fine method, no problem. It's a lot of prep and a lot of time and energy, but it's a beautiful ceremony. It's kind of cultural appropriation, though, if you haven't gone and learned it from a medicine person who is from the tradition and been authorized to do it. I think if you just go out and try it on your own, it's not, and call it a sweat lodge, I think it's not cool. But anyway, as a practice, I think it's good as any other. I like all the purification practices of the preliminaries and foundation, and I think you can't go wrong with more of them. But I don't think we should focus on the physical purification aspect of the sweat lodge. I think the sweat lodge should be focused on as a mental, emotional, karmic purification through a confession, surrender, seeking refuge in Great Spirit, and asking for the help of your ancestors and all those great spirits of the directions, et cetera, that we invoke in a sweat lodge, just like we would do asking for our Mahasiddha ancestors to help purify us, during the Guru Yoga when we do confession and purification, then we reestablish the Shaktipata in connection to the masters. Same thing. Okay. Rudraksha, how are we doing on time? Oh, good. Only 1 hour. Would you please elaborate creation phase and completion phase in Tibetan Tantra and how to use this model to understand TMY better? Okay. Why don't I just do it for Mahasiddha Yoga Tantra in general, not in Tibetan Tantra, because it is in both systems, right? It's just talked about more in Tibetan. The Indians don't talk about it much as two separate phases. They just kind of say, look, it's just a continuum from beginning to finally getting the fruit. Where Tibetans go, okay, it's the beginning and you're doing all this generation and now you shift the way you practice and you get into completion phase. Okay, so in general, when we're talking about, this is focused on deity yoga now. This is deity yoga we're talking about here. This means the practice of taking a spontaneously arising awareness being's image, shape, energy, visualization, sound, bhava, or bhava, what can we call it? Like a inner disposition of the deity, character of the deity, you could say, by using these enlightened beings that are spontaneously generated from the base essence state. They're generated spontaneously because of our suffering, and we can use them as a vehicle, a tool to glimpse and then become what we truly are, which is beyond suffering. So in this way, the deities become great aids for the tantric yogin. Over my shoulder right here is Dhumavati, a very austere image of the goddess as very old and drawn and crenulated and dark. And she has a Saturn crow sitting up here, whereas on top of her flag. So very Saturnian, but this is one of the manifestations of essence that can be very relevant to people at certain phases in their life practice, as well as could be their guardian deity, right? Okay, their tutelary deity, the deity that teaches them. So for people who are going into Way of Water, which we're running a 1-year special program on Way of Water starting October of 2022 here in Costa Rica, you'll be going so deep into this. You'll be doing the sadhanas of dozens of deities with the abhishekam, the ritual empowerments, and so on, and finding your own deities, the ones that are there to guide you specifically, and so on. So the two phases in Tibetan way of describing this, there are two phases of practice on the deity. One is considered generation, the other one's considered completion. In the generation phase, we can think about it. Let me break it down a different way so it's more understandable. In the first phase of deity yoga, you must think about the deity as your master, right? And this has parallels in Guru Yoga as well, because they both have the same functional dynamics and yield the same result, except the higher level from Guru Yoga if you get there. So the first level of dealing with the deity is your master. I'm out of control. When I first supplicated to Durga, my master, in my deity yoga, I felt I did deity yoga first with Shiva, but I didn't quite know what I was doing. And it's more like what the whole lineage does. So it was like more like the religious level. But then when I was instructed specifically by my guru that your deity is Durga, I went in, I received the Durga Abhishekams, and I did deity yoga sadhana of Durga. I first took her as my master, which means I didn't, oh, ma, I love you, ma. No, it wasn't, oh, you sexy consort, have sex with me in my visualization so I can get enlightened. No, definitely not. And definitely not ma, mother, and mother. It was taskmaster. It was master. It was, I surrender to you, ma. I need humility. I am out of control. We have to get this deep sense of being contrite, really understanding how bad our karma is. Even if your life looks pretty good. My life looked great at the time, but I knew inside, I'm not realized. So I must have tremendous karma stills. Please, ma, oh my God, please, being my master, I submit completely. So the first years of my practice were like that. Complete submission, orientation that she's teaching me, guiding me, protecting me, disciplining me. In other words, you enter the mandala in deity yoga right away, In other words, everything is part of the deity as soon as you get empowered with the deity yoga practice. But you have a different orientation within the mandala all the way through the different stages of the deity yoga practice. And I'm really looking forward to doing this in Way of Water next year in 2022, because it's so powerful and I've benefited so much from it. And the acharyas that will be here will be training in it, but then I'll be running regular trainings on it that year for people to come and visit. But if anybody wanted to stay for that whole year program, if you're really into deity yoga practice, it's great. You take a 1-year retreat and you get all the abhishekams in your practice. It'd be awesome. The guy got a lot from it, because you have to reach this place of, okay, look, I'll be frank with you. I have a pretty good IQ. I'm an accomplishing kind of person. Take no prisoners when it comes to going for it. I'm pretty good at seeing myself and telling the truth to myself and sucking it up and doing it. But there's always a point where it's just out of reach for us, where we just feel like we need just some kind of help from somewhere. There's a story that is worth repeating here. When Shankaracharya, the great Shankaracharya that single-handedly pretty much ruined Buddhism for India by out-debating all the Buddhist debaters all over India, they were afraid to debate with him because he was so good they would lose and they'd have to join his school. So India ran off to Southeast Asia big time in Sri Lanka at that time. Buddhism ran off to Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka at that time, a lot because of Shankaracharya, actually. And he didn't do it all, but he was pretty formidable in this sense. Now, when he was out traveling to one of these debates, very long distance, he was in the desert, probably Rajasthan or something, I guess. And he had fallen down from thirst. He didn't have enough water to make it to the next place, probably got lost or something. And he was thirsty and had no water, and he was getting delusory and sick. And he had what probably was some kind of diarrhea kind of disease where he was losing a lot of water. What's the one? The main diarrhea disease of poor people? Cholera, right? He might have had something like that. And so he's out there wandering around and finally collapses. He says, well, I'm just going to die here. So he starts to surrender, which is interesting. This is early in his career. And then he wakes up out of his dying haze, and he looks out in the distance and he sees this incredible vision of a woman walking in a red sari out in the middle of nowhere, like where he just walked, and seems to be coming towards him. And he just passes out again, but very far away. And then he wakes up again and she's right there with him. And she looks at him and she says, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Like, what ails you? And he looked up and he said, I have no Shakti. Shakti means power, but it's a play on words also because Shakti is the name of the goddess, right? He said, I have no Shakti. And up to that point, getting back to the very first question we started with, he was a hardcore Vedantist. He didn't know Tantra yet. And he didn't understand Shakti. And as he was dying, he looked at her and he said, I have no Shakti, meaning he was trying to say, I have no power, I have no strength, I'm going to die. But it hit him that he was looking at a manifestation of the mother goddess. So the mother goddess physically manifested for him, because that's what happens when you have, out of the 3 levels of spiritual practitioners, the highest capacity practitioners, gods and goddesses will literally manifest in form for you. Mahasiddhas will literally manifest in form for you and teach you. He had that level of accomplishment, of capacity, inborn capacity. And therefore the goddess appeared. Uma, Ma Prana Shakti, appeared right there in all her glory, in her beauty, in her red sari. And he said, I have no Shakti. And she said, I know. I know, you're up in your head. You're got a great white bindu, but it really is nothing without the red, right? We need both of these experiences to have the full experience of the Sambhogakaya, to know who we are. So he passes out, and then he wakes up again. She's cooking something, and she starts to feed him, and he eats it, and he feels completely whole. And then he passes out again, and when he wakes up, the fire's gone, she's gone, everything's gone. And this is a famous story. So he had to learn, the point is, he had to learn to be humble enough to go, okay, I don't have full realization. My Vedanta is not full realization. I need the Shakti. And from then on, he became a serious devotee of the mother goddess and wrote Saundarya Lahari, the 64 verses on the goddess. Each one has a specific yantra and practice and mantra and will give you siddhis and so on. All this is attributed to him. Now, this is to say that when we first start out deity yoga, we are in a sense master and disciple. And you just do everything that deity tells you. Well, deity's not talking to you yet. So what do? You read the textbook of the deity's exploits. You read the textbook of the deity's teachings. You perform the puja, the ceremony to the deity, begging and asking them to guide you, protect you, teach you, empower you, give you Shaktipata, teach you your true nature, please, please. And you offer your karmas up with all these offerings. You're making thousands of offerings and with flowers and foods and fire ceremonies and all this kind of stuff. In these years, I had a huge fire ceremony pit in my backyard, and all my friends and students from Sydney would come and join and do these ceremonies with us all together. So you're purifying deeply to develop an openness to be able to receive the grace in the form of teaching, practices, the deity giving you discipline, and you're developing this awareness of the presence of the deity all the time as your master with you all the time. If Durga was on my shoulder, would I do this? If Durga was on my shoulder, would I say this? Would I feel this? What would I feel if she was on my shoulder? How would I see the whole world if I was in her mandala? All this is developing the first few years of deity yoga. This is the generation practice from Tibetan terms. And the technical aspect is you're doing very elaborate pujas that have an activation of your body to become the body of the deity in the mandala. You're doing very, very elaborate and detailed visualizations of the deity. You're immersing yourself in their world to try to see everything as if you're in their mandala, right? And doing the mantra, of course, is key because the mantra is the energy of the deity. And that's why it has to be introduced to you by a master who has the power of that mantra, of that deity. If you don't have the mantra introduced to you by a person who comes from that tradition, who's above stage 7, you're not going to have the power of that practice, plain and simple. You may delude yourself. You may have a few nice meditations and start thinking that the yummy feelings you're having and the occasional dreams you're having show that you're really connected. But if that person who connected you was just an academic, just a scholar, just a translator, just a local yoga teacher or a kook or whatever, the connection won't be as good as if you get it from a real person who is in the lineage, a real teacher in the lineage. So you cultivate that master-disciple relationship. And then after that, a master servant. It's actually master servant, like slave servant. And then after you feel like everything you're doing, and here's the key, everything you're doing, saying, feeling is an offering to the deity because you're trying to win their affection. You're trying to win their guidance. You're trying to have them perform what? Avesha, and penetrate you. Okay. So then after you do this process of humbling yourself, opening yourself, being a slave servant, then you qualify as a disciple. Then you'll start to understand. The more you practice, you'll start to have innate understanding dawning within you of how Tantra works, of how the human energy system works, of how the path goes. And you'll have signs will start to come that you're doing the right thing, that you're on the right way. You may even get a dream of the deity where you come for them for blessings and you bow and they bless you and you feel completely different, maybe you receive knowledge or something. This kind of thing can happen. And this is the entering the phase and moving into the phase of being a disciple. So you went from servant, slave to disciple. Now there's an intimacy there. Now the deity is said to have initiated you, right? And now you're working deeper. Now you're feeling much more camaraderie. You're feeling much more like you're becoming closer in the retinue of the being surrounding the deity. And you're becoming more like them every day, which is the goal, to become just like them, because they're a perfect Dharma being, right? You want to be that same in your own essence. Okay, so that phase goes on for however long it goes. And then it naturally shifts again into the phase where you feel extremely close, like a family member. And then it's father or mother. Okay, so now they're the guru. You have your main guru, of course, but you see them as another guru, like an upaya guru. They're a guru, and their mother and your mother or father. And that's really close. That's very affectionate. Now the deep nourishment comes. You start moving into the secret level of practice. You went from outer, inner to secret. And now at secret level, the graduation from inner to secret is then the deity becomes where it's kind of hard to separate yourself from the deity. And if you have the deity who's the opposite sex, then there's a mental, visual, sexual sadhana that's performed to become one with the deity. And then you get to the most profound level, you become the deity. You actually literally become like a walking, talking Shiva, like Nityananda. Nityananda Baba was a walking, talking Shiva. Neem Karoli Baba was a walking, talking Hanuman. Neem Karoli Baba would be getting onto a train. I don't know if you know this Yogin, he was amazing. He'd be getting onto a train and the conductor would come down and say, "Where's your ticket?" And he said, "I don't have a ticket." And he's a naked guy under a blanket, dirty naked guy under a blanket. And this conductor wouldn't know who he was. And he'd throw him off the train. And he would just sit next to the train. And he would just sit there and the train wouldn't start. And the train could not pull out from the station. And many people who did recognize him would say to the conductor, that's Baba, Neem Karoli Baba. He's God incarnated. He's Hanuman incarnated. You have to put him on the train. That's why the train's not going. We're not going to go anywhere if you don't put him on the train. And they'd put him on the train and then he would smile and then the train would take off. And this is not once, twice, but hundreds of times this happened. Many, many miraculous things he was able to do. Many, many miraculous things. This is what a God can literally do in this dimension, in the dimension of form. And that is the ultimate fruit of deity yoga, is that you have the city of the deity on the level of body, speech, and mind. Many people will get the city of the deity on the level of mind, have the mind of the deity, the enlightened mind, which is all you need, basically. But then others will have the level of speech and the level of energy that goes with the speech, where they can perform cities. And some will have it at the level of the body, where the body is like a stage 10 kind of body, can walk on water, sit underwater for days in a row, fly, all these different kind of things. So you go through these different stages, right, that I just outlined. This is a better way to understand it than just generation completion. It's too simplistic. I like this smooth way of going through it. And we're going to experience that in the way of water gear. Now, that was a long answer, but I hope that somebody like Kendra or Sukalia Yogini will cut that out and put that up separately as what is deity yoga. So people can just go right to that instead of having to go through this whole yogi to yogi all the time. Because we covered it fairly well generally there. Rudy, number 2.
Follow up to that, just from this person Wagner. Deity yoga seems like Candomblé, Santeria,
Umbanda, yeah. Yeah, Afro-American religion, yeah. Wagner, I studied Santeria, trained in it, and took initiations in Cuba. So I understand it completely, Candomblé and Santeria. It is very, very similar. Here's the difference, and this is really interesting. You should say this. At the time, I was looking for the most powerful forms of tantric practice. And I had this from my Norse tradition of Scandinavia, from my Norwegian teacher initiating me into the deities there. I had it from my tantric teacher, and then I had it from Santeria. And I found Santeria to be very palpable, very strong in the dualistic world, right? Like Candomblé is as well. And I found the Indian Tantra and the Norse to be, the Norse was medium in between immanent and transcendent. And then the Indian was very much transcendent. So then it's not transcendent as in transcendental, but more refined and more subtle. And when I was with my padrino in Cuba, I said, we started talking a lot. And he said, what have you done before? It's amazing. We were talking about Tantra. And when I gave him a lecture, he's a sweet old man, gave him a lecture, a sweet discussion on what is the view, method, and fruit of non-dual Shaiva Tantra. When I got to the fruit part and got towards the end of it, he was literally crying. He had tears coming out. He said, that is so beautiful, that ultimate love and compassion and oneness of you with your own nature and with the nature of all beings. He said, that's what I want. And he was the highest level padrino on the island. That's what I want. He said, we just can't get to that in Santeria. We don't have that full non-dual idea that you're describing. We don't fully have that, nor do we have it in practice, because the practice is much more geared around making stuff happen in the world. And I felt for him very deeply. And that's when I decided to not go the rest of the way. I had two more initiations to go. And I said, no, I'm done. To be a padrino, I had 2 more to go. And I said, I'm done. So that's a good question. Okay. Now, is that it on that one for Wagner? Okay. Then Rudy's second one. What do you think of Michael A. Singer and his book, Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment? What stage do you think he reaches? Never heard of Michael A. Singer. Can't make any comment. Okay, Rudy, all done. Jorge, hope all is well over there in Costa Rica. Pura vida. Jorge, how could it not be well in Costa Rica, right? Pura vida, baby. I would love to know, when did the TMY started as TMY formally? I understand its Middle Asian traditional roots, but not where and when did you resolve to organize it into a comprehensive system? Oh, great. I'm glad you understand I organized it this way, because there is no school called Mahasiddha Yoga. The Mahasiddhas themselves went through their own practices. For people that are new to this, let me give background to Jorge's question. Mahasiddhas came from Shaiva non-dual Tantra, or dualistic sometimes, and became Mahasiddhas, went beyond their system. Came from Mahayana Buddhism, or Vajrayana, mostly Vajrayana Buddhism, from Bön, from Dzogchen, and from Orthodox Taoism. Okay, these are the systems that I recognize Mahasiddhas from. Once they reached Mahasiddha level, they all taught the same principle system and the same principle technique package. And I realized, this is the way to cut to the chase for modern times, where I don't have to get caught up in a massive religious, culturally religious, ethnically religious presentation of the teachings that is unnecessary for modern people, while still retaining all of the power of the Mahasiddha tradition. And I realized that all of my gurus and my lamas and my daoshu had been preparing me all the way along, and had been very vocal about strip away the ethnicity, strip away the culture, strip away what's not necessary, understand the ultimate skeletal framework. This is Mahasiddha Yoga. So I think your question is, when did this? I'd love to know, when did you start? Formally, God, I don't know. Let's think about it.
I think we really came around 2018 when we really started to create the.
Yeah. So around 2015, end of 2014, going into 15, I decided not to teach. I just said, I'm not going to teach because it's not working in this form. It's I was working out of trying to make it available with different modern psychologized versions of traditional tantric pedagogy. And then I would have people go through that and then take them into deeper tantra, like the real classical tantra after. And then it just wasn't working. And then I realized over time, the best thing, like my first guru first told me, just teach traditional right away. And I didn't hear that in the beginning. And I thought I could do it better because I wanted to reach people. I thought it's too arcane and everything. So I got rid of everything that wasn't exactly the teachings and the practices, got rid of all ethnicity, all culture, all spiritual culture, all religion, the worst parts of all those that I just named. And in 2015 to 18, I formulated in my mind how we wanted to approach it. And then my wife and I put it together in 2018, 17, 18, really, 17, 18, and got it down into a systematic form where it's achieving what all of those separate religious systems of Vajrayana, non-dual Shaivism, Orthodox Taoism, Dzogchen, et cetera, Dzogchen's not really religion in its pith, but what the other religious forms of Tantra, not Dzogchen, but Tantra and Taoism were doing, we were able to put together a system of presenting that without getting caught in any one of them as, a cultural religious presentation. And therefore it made it at the same time super potent and very traditional. Super potent and very traditional. So I stopped psychologizing it. I stopped making it easier for Westerners to get into, and said, let me just train these people the way I was trained. I was not trained in the religious mode. My teachers didn't care if I wore a T-lock and I did ceremonies. They didn't care if I wore jeans and a flannel T-shirt to do my ceremonies. They didn't care if I had a top knot or didn't have a top knot. That was all just parts of practice for the time. They never made me be vegetarian, celibate, none of it. Pure Mahasiddha training from the beginning I got, which was very different than they were training everybody else. And they were very vocal about, we want you to do this. We want you to preserve this tradition. This is the modern times. This is what has to happen. Translate text, keep the oral teachings, put it in modern way of understanding it, but keep to the roots of the tradition. So I actually think I went back in a way. I think I went back and established this Mahasiddha tradition circa 400 CE to 600 CE. That's what I feel like we're doing now, is what was really popular around 400 to 600 CE by yogin practitioners that were up in the mountains, the pre-Himalaya hill station and the Himalayas. I believe that this is how it really was. And this is very traditional. So that final flip began in 2015. The system was finalized in 2018, a way to put it together in this way. And it was really not me creating anything new. It was me going back to what my first guru said. You're learning classical tantra. Teach it as classical tantric yoga, Dharma. And I'm like, okay. And it was looking at that. It was very much the influence of my Lama as well, my main Lama after that. And I was with Namkha Norbu and other very open-minded Lamas, and they were all saying the same thing. But my main Lama was very big on this too. He said, get this stuff out of Tibetan language, get it out of Tibetan culture. Nobody has to walk around wearing Tibetan clothes, acting Tibetan. I'm like, yeah, why do we do this? He said, get the prayers out of Tibetan language, get them in English or Portuguese or wherever. The prayers don't have to be in Tibetan language. There's nothing magic about Tibetan language. The mantras have to stay the same. And this was what the gurus of the Shaivism said too. And I understood that. So yeah, around that time. Let's see. I understand the Middle Asian traditional roots. Good. But not where and when did you resolve to organize it? Okay. Whether it was a particular year or over time. Well, I mean, it was a progression over time as I saw things not working, but then it was a decision to go back to teaching purely traditional. This is why our school is very small now. This is why we don't care to initiate hundreds of people like I used to do, because it's simply not understood correctly when you go mass. We're just building the yoga shala here. It's going on the boat Monday, tomorrow, from Bali, where it was expertly carved and cut every piece. It's all wood, and it's coming over here to Costa Rica on a boat. It's going to be assembled in time for the trainings. And the whole thing is, how big did we want to make it? Well, I'll tell you how small it is. We made it 7 meters by 7 meters. It's very small because we're not looking at classes for the masses. Because when you do that, you absolutely have to dilute the tradition, or you're always teaching beginners, and you're never going to take people really deep. So we want to keep it small, keep it qualitative. I'm glad we have an online presence where I can reach people with the basic teachings and question and answer formats like this. But what we really are focusing on is taking a handful of people very deep all the way to become acharyas, lineage holders, preserve this thing for the future. Good question. I resonate with the teachings, so wondered if it would be good to know about its history and its process. Yeah, I hope it helps you understand it better. We have nothing to hide about that. Some people say, oh, you tried to make a brand new system. No, I didn't make anything brand new. This is as traditional as you can get, actually, Can you identify the main differences in how astrology is part of the view of Indian, Chinese, and Tibetan TMY traditions? How are those deities? Can you explain this question? You got astrology and deities.
It's a separate question.
Oh, okay. So first question, can you help explain what that means?
Yes,
How does Tibetan tradition,
Chinese,
Chinese, Taoism, Indian, use astrology in the spiritual process, in its path? How do each one use it? Yeah, they all use it the same way. All these traditions use astrology in the same way, right? So the original astrology of India was called Raja astrology, Raja Jyotish. It was just for kings to see cycles that they were going to have to rule through and understand how to work with the cycles of time and space in their kingdoms, And then over time, there became astrology of, well, if we can see these cycles, then we can understand these cycles spiritually as well. And then spiritual groups started using them this way. And then eventually, the very last stop on the astrology roller coaster or tour adventure ride is personal astrology. How do I understand my personal karma from the map of the sky at my birth that I was coming into? And how does that then give me predilections, preferences, inborn capacities, aptitudes, interests for certain types of spirituality, certain deities, and so on? And then they all basically do the same with that. I should say Tibetan astrology and Indian astrology are more like related. The Chinese astrology, although Tibetan looks a bit like it, is very different. It's the way pole star Taoist astrology doesn't assign deities through the astrology. It doesn't quite look at the ways of practicing as precisely and in such detail. It's more generalized in that sense. Okay. It's a very good system of astrology on other levels, spiritually speaking, like the inner element, outer element relationship, I think is the truly great insight of the Chinese astrology that all Vedic or Tantric or Mahakala astrologers should bring in because it's so beneficial. But that's kind of how that goes. Okay. And then the second part.
The second part is how planets relate to the deities.
How planets relate to deities.
In view and practice.
Okay. That's a history thing because over history, like the sun was its own planet, then the sun was associated with Shiva for a certain period of time. So in time periods, the planets were associated with certain deities, and then that shifted over time. And then not only over time did it shift, but as systems branched out, as sectarianism developed in the so-called Hindu oneness, and it all branched out, then traditions began to associate certain deities with certain planets in their system over time. And it contrasted and contradicted other systems. So in Mahakala astrology, we have a wide range of these associations of planets and deities, or not just deities, but nagas and dakinis and ghosts and demons, and a lot of associations like this. Yeah. Is that good? Okay, sure. Oh, you have another one. What are the words referring to nature correlated and used in TMY as essence besides sky? Okay, so referring to nature, like outer physical nature? Sometimes earth. So besides sky being a nature word that in Mahasiddha Yoga is used to talk about your essence, like in the esoteric we call hrid, heart, right? Essence, heart, hrid, and many other terms. When we're using the Mahasiddha outer words to designate essence, nature, sky is often used because that's the spaciousness of it. But then earth is often used to have a sense of that continuity of it. So sky is like pure spaciousness and earth is like the pure continuity. And if you know the elements, earth and space are actually two sides of the same coin in the 5 elements. And that's probably why that developed that way, So there's those kind of nature ideas. And then the classic of the clouds being the thoughts passing through and then clearing and the sky's there, not obscuring the sun. The sun can never be really obscured. It's always shining, but the cloud comes over it. So sun doesn't get shut down. It's just obscured for a moment and temporarily it comes out. And people say, well, that's cute nature symbology, but is it really symbols or is it sign? And we say, no, it's really symbols because when you're around real masters, their connection to nature is phenomenal. Most really high level masters demonstrate this. Like my grandfather, Thundercloud, Cherokee Chief Thundercloud, he could make it rain over there while you sat here just by thinking about it. He was phenomenal. When I studied with Mikhaila Lazarovich in Ukraine, he could, a hailstorm could come out and he could actually pick up a hailstone, eat it, say a prayer. I mean, they're big. They could kill you. They would kill cattle, kill people. He could eat it and have it open up a circle all around his farmhouse and his cattle. It was amazing. His crops didn't get smashed, but everybody's around did. I've seen this, literally seen this, and so on and so on. And I've trained in connecting to wind and clouds and water and different things like that as well, because it's part of traditional shamanic training that entered into Tantra and became Tantricized, right? So a lot of these beautiful nature connections are still there in this way. So Nagas are considered to be real beings, but they're also considered to be symbolic of esoteric realities within us as well, and so on and so on. Yeah? Oh, good, we're done, right? Okay, to the chat. Let me roll back up to where? Deva Deva Music. Hello, Deva Deva Music. Shining, shining light music. Hi, Dharma. Could you share some thoughts on Khechari Mudra, the Hatha Yoga version? Entering the nasal cavity with the tongue seems to supercharge all energetic practices. What is your experience? Absolutely. David Music. Khechari Mudra is super powerful. There's no real high level attainment through Hatha Yoga without some level of ability of Khechari. Can your tongue get all the way up in there? Great. Then you're stimulating the base of the brain. And who knows, pineal glands and so forth, all kinds of things can be stimulated. Cerebrospinal fluid through the ventricles. Who knows what's actually being sucked down through that experience. And when you're holding the Jalandhara Bandha, it all stays in here, right? And then keeps reifying. So, and then when you let it come down, it transforms the body into a basically immortal body. So if you want the real results of Hatha Yoga, you have to do that. And when we're running this training down here in Kundalini Hatha Yoga, traditional style, no holds barred, October 7th till next year, October. And that's a big part of the training. So whether people are going to shave the bottom of their tongue slowly with a dull rock over days, over 60, 90 days and have it become really long where they can touch their third eye, or whether they're going to have a doctor cut the frenulum and be able to do it. Either way, whatever, it definitely will supercharge practices. And it is my experience from when I was in retreat that this was a very important practice. Along with Mahakumbhaka, this may be the most important practice. So I would say Khechari Mudra, Mahakumbhaka together create the most important practice combination for all of the result of Kundalini Hatha Yoga as the foundation of all other higher yogas as well. Good question. What a blessing to be born human. Yes, it is. Nadine. Hello, Dharma. Could you explain, I guess, why only in the human realm there is free will and not in the other realms? Okay. I can't explain why. It's just the way it is. The human realm has flexibility and freedom inherent in it. In the other ones, the karmic view, the lens is so locked in. This may help us understand a little bit that every little bit of evidence of that realm confirms that view and just disallows the freedom of questioning it, because the evidence that comes back from your perception and your experience in that realm is so strong that it locks you in. So the inherent freedom isn't there. In other words, when we do a human astrology chart, it'll say where you have fixed karma, you can't change it. Where you have karma, you can change, and where is a bit of both. If you did an astrology chart of the hell realm person, the ghost realm being, the fixed karma would be 99.9%. Only that 0.01% or something like that of non-fixed karma would allow for someday the karma to run off and the person to leave that realm, the consciousness to leave that realm. Okay. So example, if I was in the hell realm, the descriptions of the hot hell realm is that the air is so hot, it burns my lungs as I breathe in. It burns them and damages them as I breathe in. The ground is so hot, it burns my feet as I walk. The air is so hot, it burns my skin. Just being there burns my skin. Everything is red. All I can feel is anger. The only emotion, the only feeling at all is anger. Hatred for every other being around you. And you're being tortured and persecuted constantly by taskmasters. And you hate them and you fight them. So this is it. You're in a complete hellish situation where there's no other reflection possible. Basically impossible until all that energy runs off. Okay. Human realm, we have our own problem as human beings, but the gift is that we have freedom. And unfortunately, we use that freedom to sometimes act like a hell being, like a demon, like I just described, and hating everything and thinking everything is out to get me and persecuting me, or to be like a hungry ghost and think I never have enough and I've got to have more. And, I'm unfulfilled, or, to be a God realm new age person and think that you're all that, no humility, total swollen head pride, that's our freedom. But we also have the freedom to choose to understand our true nature and become a fully liberated Buddha. And that's why being a human is special. It's not the best of all the manifestations, because there's a lot more than just the 6 realms descriptions of other manifestations of beings, but it's pretty darn good. Faizullah, whoa, look at that, whoa, this guy's a thinker. Okay, here we go. Apologies for the long text, but I'm a little confused about the fruit according to the view teachings. Good. Let's see if we can sort it out. What I've learned from the view teachings is that we project our own reality. Every one of us is the base and it's unlimited. We are the base and it's unlimited energy. Thus, we have the power of the whole existence in us, and with its projection power. Like Virupaksha says, the whole universe is our body, right? That sounds a bit solipsistic to me, a total inversion of the materialistic view that we are all different, separate entities inhabiting an objective world. Sounds like an inversion of the materialistic view that we're all different and separate entities inhabiting an objective world. Okay. If what Virupaksha says is true, then our Nirmanakaya is not only this bodily existence, but also the totality of manifested universe. Then the soda can in front of me is part of me since I project it like I project my body. Yes, the M sound. Oh, but then when a rainbow light Buddha resolves all their karma, he or she only takes their body with them, at least from an unenlightened person's perspective, not the rest of the universe. Then where does our shared experience start and where does it end? Maybe this is the place to start right here, Faisal, and then right into modify it if you're still there. I hope you're still there. Imagine, let's start from the stage 12 Rainbow Light Body Buddha. Let's say I go to stage 12, I become Rainbow Light Body Buddha. The universe that was manifested, I'm no longer occupying it. I'm no longer a resident of this world of form because I'm gone beyond the realm of form, desire. So I'm no longer a resident of desire, realm of desire, no longer a resident of the realm of form, no longer a resident of the realm of non-form. I'm beyond it all. I'm the pure Dharmakaya, the blue guy, and I'm the spontaneous arising energy as well. And the potentiality of a Nirmanakaya as well is there. So the soda can, I think you used the soda can. Yeah, the soda can in front of you, you do project it. To some degree, you're projecting it. When you Rainbow Light Body or when you get stage 10 experience as well, it'll be much more fluid and open. There will be no objective soda can just sitting there for you anymore. But there will still exist an objective soda can for others if they project that. Even physics now is showing us this. You know Hoffman, I'm sure you know about this scientist Hoffman. You got to read his latest books and his research. It's just amazing. This idea that that creation is purely perception. In other words, it comes into being in the moment of perception is gaining more steam from a physics standpoint. This is what we really believe for the higher stages of the view. But it's all about the perceiver. That's why in Shaivism, there's the 7 perceivers, the Sapta Pramatra. And that's why in the tantric teachings that we do, we have the 12-stage view, the more oral teachings, less philosophical. And we also have the 4 times, because 4 times is also called the 4 perceivers. Because as we change and as our consciousness changes, what we perceive and therefore what we inhabit changes, including our own body. So when Mahasiddha Virupaksha says, in truth, verily, this whole universe is my body, he's in stage 10 going into 11, 12, and he's saying, I get it. I project this whole thing. But it doesn't mean that when I dissolve mine, that yours dissolves too, because you're projecting the whole thing too, right? So it brings up an interesting point. If the soda can is sitting between you and I, we're both looking at it. What do you think we're seeing? Is there any objective reality out there? Are we both seeing the same thing? Are we both seeing a different thing? And even this guy Hoffman's physics experiments, I think he was a neuropsychologist, right? But now he's doing these quantum physics type neuropsychology experiments and running them through computer simulation because you can't really test these things, you know? But the simulations are coming up with really good answers, which are very much along the line with Mahasiddha view, which says the can is existing there because you're projecting it, perceiving it, and mine is there because of that. Yours is there because you're looking at it like there. And actually, it's not there really in actuality at all. What we're seeing is a stand-in. What we're seeing is a stand-in that allows us to order and make sense of our world because we're an organizing, sense-making consciousness modality. And when we go beyond that, then we're that plus the base, plus its spontaneous arising energy. We're said to be sitting behind time. So we always say, Machendra Nath, right? Machandanatha, Machendranatha, that's the same guy. We always say that he sits behind time and space. If you ever go to Thailand to our original Machanda temple there and see the statue, and if we ever get lucky enough to be able to buy it back someday, you'll see that Machanda's holding a huge crystal, about that big, a real crystal. Hope somebody hasn't stolen it. And he's holding a skull full of brains and blood pouring over as well in the other hand. And the crystal represents sitting behind time. That sitting behind time, he is that pure light of consciousness that when it goes through the refraction of the crystal becomes the pure variegated essence of everything. And so being a conscious Buddha, he can create universes, right? And universes containing beings and everything. It's kind of out there. It's a bit of like a fractal in a sense, in this way. He's now sitting behind and he's generating it, right? So how can we, let's see, when a rainbow, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I think that's the way I would answer what you're asking. If you need to refine it, that would be good. But this is the way to understand our view. What is the fruit according to the view teachings? Well, I learn from view teachings to project our own reality. Yes, we do. Every one of us is the base and it's unlimited energy, true, but it's not in its full totality, right? Until we become a Buddha. Thus, we have the power of the whole existence in us, right? And with its projection power, right? But we don't have that until we get 12. A total inversion of the, what's solipsistic? I can't remember. Do you know, Kalash? Solipsistic? I thought it was soapalistic. Let me look it up. Everyone bear with me, having a vocabulary lesson by Fizula. Show results solipsistic. Okay, it's adjective of relating to or characterized by solipsism. That doesn't help. Extreme egocentricity. Okay, right on. I follow. Thought that's what you were getting on about. Okay. Oh, I just lost everything. Uh-oh. I lost the camera and everything, honey. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. No, I got it back. Okay. So, solipsistic, where'd it go? That sounds a bit solipsistic. To be extreme ego, to say that the whole universe is my body, right? A total inversion of the materialistic view that we are different, separate entities inhabiting an objective world. Yeah. Well, one thing we want to avoid also in this understanding of the view at a very high level, like Zula is delving into right now, is extreme views, extreme nihilism, like Vedanta, nothing exists. It's all illusion. Extreme views of materialism, it all exists and it always has existed and it always will exist, you know, and we're going to, like Samkhya, pop out, you know. That's extreme. These are very extreme views. The real view is much harder to understand with the intellectual mind, which is based in dualism, harder to describe with language, which is based in dualism, because it's not dualistic, but it's also not allowing dualism either. And that's kind of difficult. So if you have a refining question, let me know, but that's how I would answer it so far. Oh, yeah, more. Did I get to this? Then where does our shared experience start? Where does it end? Oh, yeah. Okay. With the soda can example, I explained that as far as we understand it in our view. How and where do we connect with each other? This is a great question. How and where do we connect with each other with this view of TMY? It's very simple in that we all are this base. We all share this base, but we all have our own individuated experience of it, which is unlimited by time and space. And you say, wait a minute, but if we all have our own, isn't that limited by time and space? We say, no, it's not. The full radiance is there. It's there in its fullness within us. The full knowledge of our experience as knowing without an owned, without an object, pure knowing. The full experience is there of unlimited spaciousness. And I can look over at my consort and acknowledge that she's having that same experience. Now, I can't do that from this limited standpoint where I see the soda can, as we described before, because we're not actually seeing reality whatsoever. I can't look at her and say, she's having that experience. I can't. I see an individual, right? A solid individual. But everybody has this potentiality. And everybody manifests this potentiality if they go through the process of the path and the fruit. So knowing that each one of us suffers when this experience is not fully expressed, this is what causes the natural arising compassion. You don't really have to learn compassion. People say, oh, you have to learn compassion. I don't think so. It's inherent in the base. It's inherent in the energy. But how many people are expressing the inherent energy of their base, the inherent potential energy of their base? See, compassion is there already. And it's more than empathy. It's more than, oh, I empathize. You have that. I have that. No, it's more. It's a shared experience that no one can own the totality of. Compassion is a virtue. All virtues are shared, and no one can own the totality of it. So in my empathy, I recognize that this person may be suffering. In my compassion, there's natural inclination to serve that being out of suffering. If I have been relieved of suffering first, that kind of thing. You'd like it to benefit yourself and others. When we do the prayer to benefit everybody, we benefit everybody and ourselves. It's not just everybody, because everybody else, because if we haven't achieved some kind of realization, we still need that help ourselves. We got to ask for our own help as well from the blessing power of the Mahasiddhas and the great deities of these energies. We can call them deities, or we can say the great energies themselves. This may help you with the view a bit more now. Is Anuttara Shiva a symbol of pure space? And is that an inert physics quality space, or is it spaciousness itself? And is that spaciousness itself indivisible from the spontaneous arising self-knowing, which comes in two forms at this level of pure potential? So if I understand correctly, the universe is sentient. The universe is nothing but awareness and spaciousness that are indivisible. Yoga means indivisible. Not be able to be pulled apart. That means that deity, or we should say that experience of space, is not space like here's a space, so I want to put something in it. I'm going to put my glass of tea in the space to occupy the space. That's not that kind of space. It means the pure possibility, unlimited possibility, that space. Well, that unlimited possibility and the self-knowing of it, inherent in it, makes it a sentient consciousness. And that's why we can actually pray to it, to receive a connection from that sentient level of being of pure unlimited nature. That's why we can, Aomehum Akarasale Ayang Omdu. That's a mantra for that level, to try to invoke it, to awaken it, to pray to it, to ask for that level. Same with Sambhogakaya. We can do those mantras. We can have those contemplations. They can respond to us while we still experience ourselves in limitation and duality, because these are also sentient as your nature is sentient. So interesting, right? But this capacity is full and complete within each one of us, within each one of our individual consciousnesses. That's the Trikaya. That's the beauty of the Trikaya. It's the only thing that makes sense. And yes, it's the hardest thing to grasp. And yes, it's all inclusive. And because of that, it's very difficult for people to understand, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't study it. And it doesn't mean it's not true. And the Rainbow Light Body Masters have demonstrated the truth of the Trikaya, the truth of what I just described in this view, over and over, and are still doing it now. It's not like something that happened in the past. So I think that's kind of interesting. So we should think this way. Of course, you have to give it a lot of effort first. And people say, well, I'm not willing to give that effort because I don't know if it's true. And we say, well, you see it when you believe it, not you believe it when you see it. See, in America, when I was growing up a kid, we would say, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. When I went to study Tantra for the first time, I learned the reverse of that. You'll see it when you believe it. Oh, I'll see it when I believe it. Oh, now I know why, because my perception creates my reality on a deep level, right? This is not to say that I'm in my lifetime going to be able to do anything I want. This is a weird thing. In this individual body, before stage 10, I can't say, I can choose anything I want, like these new age ideas of the secret. Is it called the secret, I think? Like I can choose whatever I want and I'm going to get it. Law of attraction. This is utter and excuse me for being profane here, but I have to, profoundly profane. It's utter bullshit. All this new age stuff of I'm going to get what I want, I'm going to attract what I want, the secret, blah, blah, blah. It's just total crap. Don't ever confuse any of those ideas with real spirituality, with the idea that you can create any reality you want with your mind. No, your individual mind can't create any reality you want. Your Buddha mind can. Your Buddha nature can, but by then you're stage 11, 12. You see, there's a huge difference in that. And what it takes to become that is a release of all the egotistical sense that I am everything and I can do whatever I want. So Faizullah, when Virupaksha Mahasiddha says, verily the universe is my body, this is a person who controlled the setting of the sun. You know, this is amazing. This is a different level because if he understands the sun as his projection, he can control it. This is the level of a Mahasiddha. Hopefully that helps. It's never going to feel, I don't think we're looking for a place where you go, I got it. It's perfectly defined in my mind. Because if you get to that level, it's sort of like you've limited it already. It's become a concept. You have to be a little more open and flowing with it. More like, here, let's take a lesson from the Taoists here. If we take a lesson from the Taoists here, they're like, oh, that's pretty close to understanding. And they let it go. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I don't quite get it. Good enough. Because that's what keeps it fresh and open. And when you lock it down, it never works. We Westerners, we love these discrete ideas that we can figure out and lock down. Okay. Zane Ivy, when we say my body, which is the universe, how do we hold that concept together with the Nara? Okay. Because at the Nara, the Atma Shakti, Jivatma Shakti, Nara, Nirmanakaya, this body in form and desire realm comes into being in response to suffering, but is always potential in the Trikaya. But the manifestation of it comes in response to suffering. So let's say my gurus and my lama, let's say, as they're growing up, they're not a Nirmanakaya Buddha. They're just a normal person. Then they become Nirmanakaya Buddha. Now they are a living repository of enlightenment energy, enlightenment experience in this realm that has come in response to everybody's suffering. Another way this can occur is that a person can be born with that capacity right from the beginning. Like we call them an emanation. They come in karma-free as a divine, spontaneously arising emanation, and they teach and they bless and blah, 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 and then they take off. I've never met one, never seen one, only heard the semi-mythological stories about it, but this possibility exists. Okay? Okay, Zane? Annalisa, hi. The deity we can see above your left shoulder, this one, is entrancing. Can you tell us more about her and the symbology of the painting? Well, in the Way of Water year, when we go through deity yoga, there'll be a special ceremony we're going to run where we invoke the presence of all the 10 wisdom goddesses and their leader, Durga Kali. And each person will receive one of them as their special tutelary deity that they will go through with life for life and so on. This is one of the 10 wisdom goddesses, Dhumavati. Dhuma means smoke. Vati, like a holder of the smoke. So it means that she's been there, done that. She's been there, done that deity, the one who gets realized because she's older and not juicy anymore and doesn't have all that great passion anymore that gets so obscuring of our own nature and fills our channels with so much wind. She's the wisdom of been there, done that. Excuse me, of pure shunya. Okay? So that's a little bit about her. Wagner, how the mind contracts essence nature. How the mind contracts.
Can you explain how mind condenses essence nature?
Where is that? Farther down somewhere?
Further down under Kendra.
Okay. Can you explain how the mind condenses essence nature? It doesn't really condense it. Essence nature is not ever really condensed. It doesn't have a shape or a form. It's no shape or form. It's purely an experience, but it's not an experience to be had by an experiencer. It is just the essential experience. Okay. So mind does not condense it. Hi, Victor. A question concerning the Way of Fire training in October. Is the Trika Mahasiddha Yoga Foundation course also prereq, as is preliminaries? It is highly recommended. You will absolutely gain more out of that year if you can do the foundation course first. You have a good 9 weeks or 10 weeks, right? Give it a shot, buddy. You're a martial artist. You can give it the big effort or not if you don't have time. But yeah, it'll be much better if anybody comes with prelims and foundations and actually prays some of those prayers before you start. If you can get some momentum going in those prayers before you start, where your mind and energy starts to embody more of that view, all the practices will be enhanced for sure. And as part of the training, we'll be using some of the prayers. But if you go through the whole training first online, you'll have a better background. Up to you. You got it. What do we got? Bikram. Hello, Bikram. I don't think we've ever had a question from you. Nice to meet you. Can you please explain about the origination and timeline of yoga? Example, Yogacara and Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Oof, that's a huge question, Bikram. And timeline is not my thing. Exact historical time points, definitely not my thing. I know what Yogacara is. I know what Patanjali is. I know all these systems, all of them basically that you could name. I know what they teach. I know roughly how they came on the scene and faded out based on textual evidence. But I'm also very much in the camp that says many of these systems existed prior to the text. And sometimes texts were assigned to certain great teachers' names, even though they were created later, right? Sometimes earlier. So I'm sorry, I got to shelf that one for now about the origin and timeline of these things. We could have a discussion about that over tea next time I'm in Delhi or wherever you are. More practical questions we want to gear towards in this, if possible. That one's a really big one. Good question. I just can't do it here because I'm not that good with the dates. Purna Tantra. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Glad we could help. I'm thinking about my body as nature and the microbes in my body as nature. Is there a way to use the symptoms I experience in a similar way to practice for transforming emotions? Can I transform these difficult symptoms and sensations? Well, oh, yeah, you have to. Well, you can transform it or you can accept it as it is to such a degree where it no longer can control you, right? There's two ways to go about it. Transforming is difficult when you don't have a lot of energy. But if you're not talking about transforming on the way of a city of transforming pain into bliss, but if you just want to transform your experience and awareness to it, you can just contemplate constantly exactly what you said, that the symptoms are a manifestation of nature and you can relax into that cycle. That relaxation is necessary for any kind of healing anyway. It seems the microbes have a vigorous life force. Can I transform the symptoms of my body experiences from their living in me as their home into the raw material of life force? You know, there's not a practice for it, but I don't see why you couldn't try. So I can't really say, I can't really say. Sorry about that, Annalisa. But the microbes in us, at some point, it's all nature. Microbes in us while we're alive, microbes in us while we're dead. Because when we die, microbes will digest us. That's the whole thing. So, and we're living with microbes to keep us alive in our biome, more cells than we have in our whole body, right? So, okay, we have to have these in there and they're part of us. But then we get the ones that are out of balance or the ones that shouldn't be there and they cause us more ill health. If you were going to put energy into using tantric practice for healing, I'd probably put it more into strengthening your ojas with visualizations of your ojas, where your body's able to sort out the microbes that don't belong and reject them, where your immune system is able to identify and strengthen much more. I would use my visualization for that. One day I'll get my morning healing practice online that I do. It's coming. Time is getting freer. Fern, could you expand on the Shaivite 7 perceivers, Sapta Pramatra? It's Sapta Pramatra, yeah. I can't, but I can say this about it. I taught it to the students, when was that? You were there, right? About 2012 or so in Thailand. And it's kind of funny. It's very philosophical based. So when you read the 7 perceivers, what most of us who are humble enough will do is read the first one and say, oh yeah, I identify with that. Get to number 2 and say, oh my God, that is so high up. I don't identify with it, and forget about 7. So it ends up that most of us see us only in the first perceiver, which is not too untrue. We are kind of the bottom of the barrel when it comes to perception. our awareness, our mind is extremely limited, no matter what we think about ourselves. So anyway, if you want to have a read about it, it might depress you a little bit in this way, but it's kind of true. Solipsism, there it is. Johnny Allison, universal will undermines solipsism. Okay. Thank you. Do you think the Orishas are gurus as in Data Yoga? Wagner, I don't think that Santeria, Candomblé, or anything else related to it has not the concept, but has pierced and understood the level of Dharmakaya and the understanding of it and the manifestation of it through practice that the Dharma traditions have. It's quite clear that Santeria, Candomblé, and all the other ones do not understand rainbow body practice, do not have a meditational progression. It's apples and oranges. I mean, it's really different, okay? And I think it's important that we also really remember that Santeria, Candomblé, et cetera, are healing methodologies. Shamanic healing, this is very important to remember. People go to it for spiritual progression. But I think no matter what you do, it always remains in the realm of dual, semi-non-dual, but never gets to the non-dual, never gets to the level of a Mahasiddha or a Rainbow Light Body Master or full Buddha. So, as much as I like them and appreciate them, first, remember their healing methodologies, not real spiritual paths, I think, on a personal level, even though people use it that way now. Second, I don't think they're ever going to take you to the dimensions that the real Dharma can take you to. That's just my opinion, and I hope it doesn't offend you, even though I trained in them myself. I have to say the truth of what I believe about it. Well, you just haven't seen any Rainbow Light Bodies or Stage 10 Masters in those shamanic traditions, so we can leave it at that. Kamala, I'm reading on Facebook with comments like, Pratibha guides me. She will guide my sadhana. I will do X until Pratibha tells me otherwise. Can you clarify Pratibha from TMY view? Okay. Boy, are you opening a can of worms. You know what you're doing here too, Kamala, don't you? Yeah. So it's popular now for Shaivite type of teachers that have academic backgrounds, but no real deep spiritual training or guru-disciple apprenticeship to put out all kinds of things on Facebook in their courses and in their books, even fabricating personal experiences at time to give credence to what they're talking about when they don't know what they're talking about. Pratibha, the goddess Pratibha, the pure intuitive arising moment outside of space and time. She guides me. She'll guide my sadhana, and I'll do X until she tells me to do otherwise. Woo. Okay. We talked about deity yoga. We want to be guided by the deity. But there's a point where we must have enough discrimination to know what is our own karmically generated concepts that we project on a deity, and then take back so-called intuitions from that deity, in this case, Pratibha, meaning the intuitive deity itself, the deity of intuition. And basically hear what we want to hear in some either twisted way or self-exalted way. And that's what this kind of person or people that write like this are talking about. If you're talking about that you have that kind of a connection to a self-arising awareness being, where it guides your sadhana, talks to you, and you're totally one with it, you're at a very, very, very high level of sadhana and spiritual work. And especially when a person like this starts to say it's guiding them all the time. I read one translator scholar who came out recently and said, I'm going to have a class. I want everybody to join, and I'm going to channel. Basically, I'm going to be possessed by this goddess, and I'm going to, spout out all the wisdoms because it'll be the goddess talking, not me. And like, wow, what a big say, Without a very long apprenticeship, a guru-disciple relationship, without having done long retreats, academic study and being able to read text and a good-hearted, inspired will is not enough to have these kind of experiences. So dangerous stuff, super dangerous stuff. So what you're asking about it is, can you clarify what is then intuition on this level of a divine goddess from TMY view? So on this level from our viewpoint, okay, Pratibha is the sense of there is a connection to your own wisdom base. We have emptiness, spaciousness, and knowing as one. That knowing awareness is the base of all wisdom. That knowing awareness is who we are. It can bubble out at times, rare times, right? Moments of aha. When people say they sit down and it comes out as long answers or writing out a text or something like that, these are people who are in very exalted states of spiritual development. We're talking really high stage 9, 10, 11 people. When we're talking about bringing through a revelation of a transmission of a tantric text or a teaching or being that in touch with the unsullied flow of pure consciousness coming through from your essence, you're not going to be around in the world very long. You're channeling something that is amazing because of your level of purity, because of your level of identification with that own essence itself. You're only a few steps before Mahasiddha or Rainbow Body. That's how TMY sees that kind of thing. And we don't say, go for that. Everybody, wake up. Please hear me on this. Trikamasa Yoga View. We don't say, go for that intuition, try to live that intuitive life moment to moment, flow from thing to thing, because we're so karmically driven that all we're doing in that case is doing whatever we feel like willy-nilly, still run by our karmas, right? It's very important. In fact, like we have rules in non-conceptual meditation. You're not allowed to keep a notebook with a pen next to your seat, right? And there's a very good reason for that. In conceptual meditation, you can. You get ideas, you get wisdoms, and you can write them down. It'll be full of your karma, but also some truth. But in non-conceptual meditation, you're not allowed to have a book, a pen, nothing in the room like that, because you don't want anything that arises in there to condition your experience of experiencing the pure spaciousness and self-knowing without an object that has no discursive mind function whatsoever involved in it. So if you start, write that down. It was an amazing thing. I give a lecture on that Friday night. You don't know how much is also your karma and your concepts and all that kind of stuff. So we do not tell people to try to be intuitive. Calm your winds in the channels. Relax a little bit. Be normal. Don't think a goddess Pratibha is talking through you and that you're such an ego-aggrandized God realm monster that you're going to get on TV and tell everybody and be like a preacher and give answers. Wow, man, what has happened to Shaivism in the world today? Not that people can't channel great gods and goddesses, they do, but they're called the Tibetan State Oracle, and there's only one of them. Like it's a very high position to be channeling like that, these levels of deities and so on. And it happens in Bon, it happens in Vajrayana, it happens in Tantra, but it's not the ordinary thing, and it's not at all important in our sadhana. So let's understand intuition, or a spontaneous arising of a sound bite of wisdom from our depth, to be possible, but not to be looked for, not to be cultivated, not to be thinking that it's so flowing out of us all the time that we're just not paying attention to it. And how we pay attention to it is go with every whim that arises and just start to willy-nilly go through life in a sense of effortless ease that's being postulated now by all the neo-Vedanta, neo-Tantric Shaivism out there. It's a highway to hell, and it's actually a turbo ride to hell right away. You're going to the hell of the God realm. Because that's going to fall apart sooner or later. You're going to get that you're not very wise. You're going to get that you didn't make great decisions. You're going to get that you're not realized. You're not a stage 10 being. You don't even have stage 7 realization. You'd know it if you ever got with a real guru who actually tests your level of realization. But these people who talk like this, who teach like this, like you read on Facebook, they will never find this out about themselves, because they will never sit with a real guru or lama who will examine their mind and their consciousness. They won't, because they don't want to be exposed as not having the state that they've told themselves that they have. And they've told their devotees and loyal money donators and fans in their fan club and money club repository, they'll never sit with a guru and get rectified because they can't be exposed. They don't want to be exposed. They're too caught up in the whole dog and pony show. And they really believe it, but some of them start believing it about themselves, which is even sadder. And I have strong words to say about this. Obviously, I'm talking like this because I function sometimes as a Dharma protector, and tough shit if people don't like it, if it makes them upset, if they don't like the truth that I'm putting out. It's the truth. Anybody who says they're channeling Pratibha, want to come on and talk about it with us, I'm happy to have you come on and do an interview. Maybe you are the next great Tibetan state oracle. Maybe you trained your whole life in channeling these kind of beings. Wonderful. Then come on and channel something for me. I want to know what stocks to invest in, but we don't really have that kind of a thing in Shaivism. We don't have that kind of a thing in Dzogchen. It's in Vajrayana, but it's not used by people as a spiritual practice. So what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? Pratibha. Don't get involved in all this trying to be intuitive, get your intuition, channeling some goddess or everything like you're some kind of purified being who could do so. Let's all eat a bakery full of humble pie. Let's be happy with normal sadhana. Let's be happy with simple happiness, ordinary love, ordinary compassion. Let's be happy with that, okay? Thanks for that. I need to get that off my chest. No, I really say that with the vehemence that I say it because it's true. And my teachers want me to talk about this. And they've both passed away, but they both said, hey, set the record straight. It's a dark time now. People are following all kinds of spiritual teachers that are just like YouTubers, basically. No different than YouTubers. I think I'm using that term right, YouTubers? Like Jake Paul and Logan Paul? Kula Yoga. Is cracking in the bones when practicing Kundalini Hatha Yoga a sign of having the wind element out of balance or not? Yes, it is. It's a sign of having wind element out of balance. And if it's really bad, you'll need Ayurveda treatment simultaneously or preparatory to doing it, to practicing the Kundalini Hatha Yoga. But sometimes long-term approach toward Kundalini Hatha Yoga, when you have the right kind of guidance, can actually take it down over time as well. That's why in our system, if you've gone on to www.trikapath.com, we offer a free introduction to Kundalini Hatha Yoga where we help to teach you how to balance the elements. And if you do that alone for 3, 6, 9, 10, 12 months, something like that, often that cracking, and if you adjust your lifestyle to be less erratic and windy, that cracking will often go down a bit. If not, you may need extra help with Ayurveda. Also depends on our age, how much disease is already in the joints and so on. Okay. Thanks for that question. Purna Tantra. After taking the foundation program and practicing the full meditation there, exposed daily, I did the 6 realms and the prelims. I've switched to contemplating practices, impermanence, ahankara, limit. Great. Fantastic. Is it okay to go switching over the 3 courses, meditations, or should I stay with one only? No, you can do, a month on the prelims meditations, then a month on foundations, and whatever you want to do. I'm starting to feel in the need of guidance in my practice. It's on one side an unstable experience. Though it also feels also a new beginning. I feel lucky for these Yogi to Yogi. I want to say thank you and all the luck. Kula, who ask all these questions, which also help open. Yeah. So Purna Tantra, wherever you are in the world, this was our purpose in doing this. And I'm so pleased that you're able to take benefit from this, even though we've never met and I don't know where you are in the world. Eventually the foundation practice, you'd want to adopt it for a period of somewhere between 1 and 3 years as a cycle of preliminary practice, that you can continue that even while you're starting to explore one of the 5 ways. But once you're done with, you feel good with you having done a strong round of the contemplation practices for a few months, then you can go into the foundation practices and do them steadily and keep popping in preliminary contemplations. But do the foundations and accumulate some real momentum in those prayers, in those practices, somewhere between 1 and 3 years. Some of the practices we can accumulate for 100,000 repetitions of each. Then we have a really great stable foundation in the view and the training. And during that time, you can also take initiation and start into the 5 ways, one of the 5 ways, which we teach in the system. You can find them online. Great. Nope. You can jump around until you decide to settle in. No problem. What's the best uses of yoga, of dream and sleep for you? I don't know, Wagner, the question's a little bit vague. The best use of them is that you practice them every single night because you're going to go to sleep anyway. So every single night you should try to practice dream yoga or sleep yoga. I recommend starting with dream yoga since it's a bit easier. And it takes years to get really good at it. So it takes some time. But it's very important that you understand that if you only have some kind of realization or integration with your essence nature in your waking state and not in your sleep and your dream state, then you can't have full realization. So at some point, when you commit to the path of full realization, you have to say to yourself, oh, I have to start practicing in dream and sleep as well. And that's what that's about. And then death will be a piece of cake. Once you have attainment in those two, death is very easy. Ian Lilly. When practicing the Kundalini Hatha Yoga online class, I have a hard time keeping the red light body visualization in my mind for very long. Is there anything to do to work on this, or should I just keep practicing? Don't worry. That's the key thing. It may take time. Just invoke it. I'd have it be simple as invoking it and then putting in your tertiary or quaternary attention while you then work on the other things that are in the foreground. That's all. And just keep re-invoking very softly once in a while during the whole practice session. I think that would be good to do, especially because it's Hatha Yoga. We're moving and we're, breathing, and you're learning new things and you're moving. So it might be hard to keep a sense of it. You might want to take the feeling of the red light body and use that even more than the visual at times. Re-invoke the visual once or twice, 3 times during the session, but try to keep the sense of the body as not being so heavy and solid, as being mutable, changeable, open and flowing, not so solid, not so heavy, right? It's said in the yoga text that we want to feel light. And it doesn't mean that you have to lose weight. It means that you want to have a light feeling to yourself. Like you could just pop up, Okay. I think we're done. Yeah, thanks for that question, Kamala. I said the same thing. Fazula, what happens when 2 enlightened people meet? Do they have a dharmic staring contest? Do they share inside jokes about enlightenment? Is there any awkwardness? I love it. Great way to end it. If you have a whole list of these jokes, please bring them to the training when you get here for Kundalini Hatha Yoga. They'll crack us up. There's a saying, it's funny, there's a saying that when philosophers meet, they argue. Yogis have this saying. I learned this from my guru. When philosophers meet, they argue. When yogins meet, they bow. And they recognize in each other the humility it takes to be a yogin. And there's nothing to argue about between each other, because when you're really practicing, you're both underneath a guru, no matter who it is, or a lama, even if it's different, you bow. I saw this many, many times when I was still a Shaivist and I hadn't gone into Vajrayana too deeply yet, or Bon or Dzogchen too deeply. I was just starting to attend some Dzogchen trainings and Vajrayana trainings and starting to go in the mountains where more of the Vajrayana yogins were practicing. What I found was I went up there and here's these advanced Vajrayana yogin practitioners, and they want to talk practice with me, young in my 20s, beginner, barely having, 5-6 years of practice under my belt or something in this deep tradition. I was like, really, what could I offer? And they're like, no, they tell talk. And then they offer their insights and I offer my insights, my little insights, And as I progressed and went over a decade through these kind of things, and I kept meeting more Tibetan yogis at Tibetan trainings, I saw the yogi bowing thing so much. And I saw it when I went in the mountains, also with the Indian yogis who were following Shaivism or Vaishnavism, or whatever they were doing, Shaktism. And you just don't see that in the philosopher world. It's just all about argumentation. Who understands the concept the best? Who cares who understands it the best? You got a tradition, you got a view. If you waste time arguing other people's positions, that's why debating, I don't care to debate Vedanta people or Sankhya people. We can discuss and help out, flesh out our own understanding, and maybe that helps them understand their position better by talking a bit. But debating to establish whose is better, which is righter, which is stronger, more superior, ridiculous waste of time. I take my lesson from the yogins that I was with. They didn't care what your sect, S-E-C-T, was. They didn't care what your sex was. They cared, are you on the path? Are you cultivating? Then we're all in the same boat. And the love and camaraderie I felt with the Tibetan yogis was so powerful, being absorbed into their thing. As a clearly Shaivist yogi, I was wearing my Shaivist marks in those days in India, wearing my Rudraksha, carrying Trishul, like the whole thing. But funny enough, they wore Rudraksha. They had Trishul. They had dreadlocks. And I was like, we look kind of the same. And I realized, right, Vajrayana yoga is the same as Hatha yoga from Shaivism. They're both the same. And they don't make the distinctions. So yeah, I like your jokes. We don't really need to argue. We need to just practice and love all beings. And when enlightened people meet, they'll probably just have a donut, All right. That's been a Yogi. Thanks for all your questions. And everybody go out and just do your practice. Stay humble and realize your true nature. Love all beings. Sarva Mangalam.